To a series of anti-Israel incidents around New York City, raising concerns and condemnation from top officials, including a disturbing scene caught on camera on the subway. Senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky joins us with more. Aaron, good morning.
And good morning to you. With this escalating series of provocations in the city has moved beyond protest and toward what the mayor here has called overt, unacceptable anti-Semitism. Masked protesters took over this New York City subway car and demanded riders identify themselves if they're Zionists.
Raise your hands if you're a Zionist! Raise your hands if you're a Zionist! This is your chance to get out! This is your chance to get out! Okay, no Zionists, we're good.
The train was held on the station. Officers in riot gear descended onto the platform as some protesters clashed with police.
Wow. It is pretty funny because, like, they're trying to say Zionist means Jew. I promise this is anti-Semitic. But you want to know the sad reality? And I mean this in all sincerity because I saw it happen in, like, the 2016 era of politics. If they said, raise your hands if you're a Nazi, the media would also still be up in arms. That is absolutely the way that baby soft pedal liberal mainstream media operates. It unironically would set discourse on fire. People be like, is it acceptable to do this to Nazis? They just mean all conservatives are Nazis. They're trying to kill conservatives. And they did that, by the way. They did this back in the day in like the 2016 era of politics. There was always a conversation about like hurting Nazi feelings. Straight up.
They were part of a rally that included a large banner, Long Live October 7th, and the flags of terror groups Hamas and Hezbollah. Protesters chanted, "Long live the Intifada," a reference to Palestinian uprisings, and set off flares outside an exhibit remembering the victims of the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. Mayor Eric Adams called it reprehensible and vile.
I thought the actions that we saw in front of...
What? Dog, I can't comprehend anti-Zionist Jews, man. What are you saying?
...of the exhibit was just despicable.
This surveillance video shows people getting out of a truck spilling red paint on the street outside the Manhattan office of the Palestinian Authority and scattering leaflets that called for more violence against Israel. Red paint and a threatening sign defaced the home of the director of the Brooklyn Museum, who was Jewish. On the door, they painted an inverted red triangle, a symbol used by Hamas. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer showed the pictures on the Senate floor.
This is not even close to free speech. It is intimidation, invasive attacks loaded with the threat of looming violence.
Police are now investigating whether this hateful vandalism is the work of the same people. And Michael, what you heard on that subway car is no longer a matter of free speech. Asking Zionists to identify themselves, the NYPD is now considering an implicit threat. They're looking to charge the leader of the call and response with attempted coercion.
What are the chances of organized by Zionist cops to manifest dangerous protests they imagine exist? No, people are definitely going above and beyond and getting a little too confident. And this is something that I always mention. I'm not going to tell people that they're in the wrong, but like, you know, putting the red triangle over a museum director's house being like, oh yeah, it's an implicit threat of violence. I don't think that people understand. You can never be even remotely as callous. Even if your cause is just, it doesn't matter. You can't be as callous as Israel defenders are. And I think a lot of people see that. A lot of people see Zionists chirping on Twitter being like, we must literally kill every Muslim in America or whatever, and think, oh yeah, like we can do this kind of shit too. It's like, no, you can't. You will be used against the broader Palestinian movement. That's it. Would a Zionist pay you to say it? Maybe they won't say it. Yeah. Don't agree with the triangle being a threat of violence? Come on, dude. We all know what that means. Like, come on. I just brought it up earlier. Come on. We're not children here. We know what the it is. Yeah, I think people are getting just so way ahead of themselves. Okay. Oh shit, here it is, the Donald Trump interview on Impulsive. But in any case, ultimately, it's not like peaceful protest is getting the message across. It doesn't really matter. You know, to each their own. Okay. I'm not going to say it's bad to protest against Zionism. I'm not going to say that it's bad to protest against Israel. It is objectively good to protest against Zionism, and it is objectively good to protest against Israel. Like, be more careful with the optics of it. Overall, people are looking for anything and everything they can to basically bastardize it. It's the same principle I've held during the Black Lives Matter protests. It's the same exact principle that I've held in every any other kind of protest where there are large groups of the population protesting against unjustifiable hierarchies, oppressive constructs, violence, militarism, Western chauvinism, imperialism, police brutality, white supremacy, transphobia, Islamophobia, no matter what it is, there are always going to be people that go above and beyond and sometimes get a little overzealous. But ultimately, you have to be careful. You have to be careful with the way you present yourself. You have to be careful with the way you present your cause. But still, ultimately, I'm not going to sit around and be like, well, you know, that's really up, unless they like go and literally do a hate crime, in which case I feel like the red triangle shit is like, you know, it's nearing that territory for sure. It's like, you can't do that. That's ridiculous. You're threatening the safety of a person. That's not productive protest at all. Red paint I'm on board with. Red paint on the outside of, like, I don't know, like a meeting or mobilization, any kind of like you know, Zionist institution that is like directly funding and facilitating or hosting a speaker event or whatever the like. Red paint is historically meant to imply you have blood on your hands. I found the whole lesser evil meme discourse strange. I don't have to orientalize, fetishize, idealize, or defend Hamas. They're authoritarian religious fundamentals who attack civilians as a resistance tactic. They're also far more pragmatic than anyone gives them credit and have played an important role in grassroots Palestinian society. I demand a ceasefire because their children are losing their mothers and mothers are losing their children every day. Anything else is on the margins. Yeah, no, the reason why I mentioned the lesser evil meme discourse is because I'm talking to Americans. Overall, I think it's up to the Palestinian people on which way they will go in the future, and the conversation surrounding the rebuilding of Gaza and putting Palestinian Authority in charge is ridiculous. Hamas is more popular than the Palestinian Authority in the eyes of the Palestinians, especially in the West Bank, obviously, which should be very interesting for people to comprehend. Why does the West Bank have a more favorable view of Hamas than the actual people living under Hamas? Is a pretty important thing to investigate, I think. Having said that, however, that is me softening the approach for a lot of people who in the Western world look at that and go, oh, they're terror cell, they're terrorists, they're terrorists, they're terrorists. And that automatically shuts off that conversation. That designation causes people to not even look at or take seriously any of the demands made by Hamas. That makes it so that you can't even negotiate with them, because Americans don't believe you can negotiate with terrorists. They are very pragmatic, though. That is true. Which is why they've seen, unless they're white, i.e. IRA. No. Guys, the ANC and the IRA did a lot of violence against civilians as well, but you're delusional if you compare them to Hamas. The PLO maybe, but not fucking Hamas. PFLP, DFLP, you could say that about, but you can't say that about Hamas. Get the fuck out of here. But ultimately, it doesn't matter, because their major function here isn't the domestic affairs inside of Gaza or anything right now. Their major function is leading the Palestinian resistance. The Palestinian resistance against what? The Palestinian resistance against apartheid and occupation. But come on, like, not to be like one of those guys who's like, oh, you wouldn't like this if you went to Gaza. But like, it's not like we don't see eye to eye on anything outside of the Israeli occupation. That's how I feel. Are you saying the IRA is better or worse than Hamas? No, obviously a group that is like committed to a Marxist perspective is a little bit different, in my opinion, than a group that was like originally started as a Muslim Brotherhood charity. Just because they're, you know, I mean, they are the only game in town. That's it. There's nothing else. So it is what it is. There's nothing wrong with Muslim Brotherhood and Islamic movements. Bro, I'm Muslim. What the are you talking about? Like, what do you mean? I come from that part of the world where fundamentalist Muslims have literally been used and propped up by the American state as a perfect counterbalance against literally secular socialist resistance fronts against colonial occupation. So yeah, I think I'm gonna have a little bit more of a, I don't know, I think I'm gonna have a little bit of a distaste for Islamic fundamentalism, but to a certain degree. That's why, like, same shit with Iran. Do I love Iran's domestic affairs? Absolutely not. But as far as resisting Western imperialism in the region, they're the major game in town. All right, here's what happened earlier today. Pro-Palestinian protests in D.C.
Demonstrators are gathering in Washington, D.C., and moments ago, they actually had a brief encounter with Park Police just outside the White House. That's where the protest has formed there, and they are contesting what they say is President Biden's failure to act after Israeli military forces began operations in Rafah. CNN's Brian Todd is on the ground outside the White House there in Lafayette Square, where it looks like the numbers of people have grown. What's going on, Brian?
Yeah, Frederica, this crowd has grown in size and in energy level for the past couple of hours. What we want to show you is kind of the central piece of symbolism that they wanted to unveil here. This is what they call the People's Red Line. This is what they were hoping would be a 2-mile-long red banner, and you can see it's got signatures, messages all over this banner here. This is right outside the fence of the north lawn of the White House. The fence was erected just over there. An extra security fence is about 9 feet tall outside of the regular security fence, because the last time time they had a protest here, the protesters threw balloons full of red paint. They threw signs and other objects onto the White House North Lawn. They wanted to try to prevent that. So far, we've seen nothing like that here. But again, a lot of passion, a lot of energy here. And the symbolism of the red line is because this crowd of people believes that President Biden misled people when he said there was a red line for Israel regarding the incursion into Rafah that occurred about a month ago. They believe that the president misled people. They're here to express their frustration with that and to call for an end to U.S. aid to Israel and for this movement basically to grow and to put more pressure on the White House. Here's another piece of symbolism. Take a look at this huge Palestinian flag. This is at least a couple of 100 feet long.
Well, I mean, they don't believe that the president misled people. The president did mislead people.
This was carried over here by hundreds of pro-Palestinian protesters through the park, and now is just kind of being unfurled here. The plan is for this banner, this red banner that you see here as I kind of walk this way, to extend all the way around the White House. This was in 100-foot sections a short time ago. Then they kind of got everybody together and put it together. They're going to try to go all the way around the White House. We're going to try to assess whether they...
Park police dance as protesters store bottles and chant fascist at him. A better review of the red line. It's huge. That's pretty cool. It's really too bad Trump is the opponent. If it was any other Republican, Dems would be in ultra panic mode and would maybe actually do something, but they know people don't want Trump, so they think they have it in the bag. Well, this lifelong Democrat is sick of it. You, Biden, honor the red line. Yeah, no, I think you're not wrong. They should still be fearful of Trump, though. But you're absolutely correct in your assessment, I think. Our resident liberal chatter is 100% correct. The Biden campaign is not worried about the actions, or at least not worried enough about the actions that Israel is taking in terms of how it complicates the calculation for an electoral victory against Donald Trump. This is genuinely a bad idea for multiple reasons. Obviously, they should be more afraid of Donald Trump because the last time they were super comfortable about a Trump victory, we got Donald Trump as the president in 2016. Beyond that, however, there is real zealotry at play here in a way that is like almost unique from the Brandon side of things and many of the State Department officials as well. This is not materialist thinking, but this is one of those instances where, like, I would go so far as to say confidently that I think the personal motivations and personal aspirations, personal ideologies of the Biden administration and high-level officials in terms of their opinions on Israel and how much violence Israel should be able to conduct, I think that goes beyond pure American State Department interest. And that's precisely why you see so much back and forth within the American State Department in general on this issue. We've never seen this many resignations in a row from the American State Department, both because they find the actions of Israel to be unconscionable, but also because they personally think that this is like hurting America's soft power chances for the future, like ruining and dismantling the international rule-based order or some semblance of an international rule-based order that we are supposed to be the defenders of, the world police. I don't know how genuine some of those people are in their belief that America is the champion of these sorts of, causes for human rights. But I do legitimately think that there are definitely a lot of people in the American federal government that think that Israel has gone way too far and it is harming America's chances of continuing to dominate the world without direct military involvement. This is playing a role in America's chances of controlling international organizations of justice. This is hurting America's soft power capabilities across the board. This is demonstrating a glaringly obvious hypocrisy that people are finally paying attention to. This hypocrisy is obviously never really stopped with Israel and our involvement with Israel for 75 years, but never before did you have this many people pay attention to it and recognize it. And I think that actually does make America look infinitely worse, especially when it tries to tell other countries like Russia or China, well, how are you going to do this? This is up. Can you imagine if U.S. Navy SEALs completed a hostage rescue mission and killed 210 civilians in the process? It would go down as the worst U.S. military operation in history. Yeah. There was a large anti-war protest in Tel Aviv today, organized by an umbrella organization, Alliance for Peace, including Standing Together, Omdim Be'echad, Breaking the Silence, Looking the Occupation in the Eyes, Hadash, and dozens of other orgs. You don't see numbers like this often. Wait, is this before or after the hostage extraction was promoted in Israel? Because the hostage extraction has been doing numbers in Israel, from what I saw this morning. They've been going nutty mode with it. Like, they've been going crazy over it. I saw footage of this is after. Okay. I saw footage of, like, that's important. That is actually really interesting. That is actually important. It's crazy to see these numbers for, like, genuinely pushing a ceasefire.
But actually able to make it all the way, because it is quite a large perimeter around the White House, especially where this fence has been set up, Frederica.
All right, Brian Todd, thank you so much. We'll check back with you.
And Palestinian Solidarity protesters have gathered outside the White House in Washington, D.C. Thousands are demanding an immediate ceasefire and an end to the siege of Gaza. Protesters plan to hold a 2-mile...
You have to remember something very serious here, by the way. A chatter asked, well, now that 4 hostages have been released, don't you think that there would be more pressure from Israel to release all the hostages? No, because the way in which these 4 hostages were released is very significant. They were released and 210 Palestinians were killed in the process. That's a win-win. When hostages were being released due to a ceasefire negotiation, if you recall, that was really bad for the Israeli government. Why? Because it showed that you could technically deal with Hamas, you could reason with them, and you could meet their demands. And the longer that would have gone on, the more people's appetite would wane for restarting the war. This, on the other hand, is great. This is like they can just turn around and say, oh, this is a major W for us. See, we can actually extract hostages while being violent. In their minds, it completely justifies the military operation. They were desperate looking for a justification for it for the past 8-9 months, and they will use this as that justification. It's laughable if you look at the situation. It's laughable if you look at the situation overall.